Thank you, Chairman Grassley. Attorney General Bondi, in our previous conversation, we talked about criminal justice reform, and in particular, your contribution to the enactment of the First Step Act in the previous Trump administration. And I just want to talk with you about a couple of bipartisan initiatives in this area. Senators Cornyn, Lee, Durbin, Tillis, Booker, and I have introduced a bipartisan bill called the Safer Supervision Act. It focuses on the fact that federal probation officers have a massive caseload, often more than 100 folks they are supposed to be closely supervising. And this bill would work on focusing supervised release resources on those who really need it and creating positive incentives for those who are willing and able to be rehabilitated and leave prison much less likely to reoffend. What's your experience about the need to support people when they get out of prison and to provide them with positive incentives rather than just leaving them to their own free will and the very high likelihood they may reoffend and thus violate public safety concerns?
Yeah, and Senator Coons, that's why reentry, we call it, halfway houses, what you need, Senator Welch, are so important because many people deserve to go to prison, but many people are going to get out of prison. And
almost all.
We don't want a revolving door. We want to do everything we can to make productive members of society. And when someone goes to prison, I saw this every day. You saw this as a revolving door. People get out and first of all, I back up. We need drug programs. I could go on all. We need drug programs, more drug programs in our prison. We have to. Mental health, we would be here for another 2 days. We have to get more mental health in our prison system, counseling to help people. I think our local jails actually do a better job of it, at least in Florida. But we've got to work on that because when people get out, we expect them to do well. Many people don't even know how to go get a driver's license, yet we're telling you, go get a job, have a place to live. So we have to do everything we can to help.
If I could move to the driver's license question. I've also led a bipartisan bill with Senator Wicker. Senator Grassley is also a co-sponsor. It's called the Driving for Opportunity Act. And it recognizes that in many states there is a practice of suspending driver's licenses where someone is too poor to pay their court-related or public safety-related fines and fees, but where the driver's license isn't suspended because they're dangerously driving. It's just because they haven't paid their fines and fees. And then without a driver's license, they lose their job or they're not able to get a job. Would you be willing to work with this bipartisan group of us on these two bills, Driving for Opportunity and the Safer Supervision Act?
I would love to read both of them, and I was unaware of that happening with driver's license.
Last two questions. Clemency, as we discussed, often near the end of an administration, there's a rush to consider pardons. Would you be willing to work at a more institutionalized clemency process where there aren't just lots of commutations near the end of a term, but where there's a regular process where the DOJ and the clemency process is looked at to see whether there are reforms that should be made and recommendations that could be made to the president throughout his term?
I would love to look at that process. I can tell you that the pardons, the commutations that Joe Biden just made were abhorrent to me, absolutely abhorrent, taking people off death row. I looked at the facts of many of those cases, and they were so troubling to me. I don't know what process you intend to implement, but I would love to study that with you.
Well, we talked positively about your experience and mine with drug courts, veterans courts, mental health courts. There are some things we will continue to disagree about and other things I hope we can work on together. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Lee.
What Bondi and Coons were arguing about in that exchange goes to the heart of a hard truth. Clemency sits at the intersection of law, mercy, politics, and public safety, and every time it's used, especially in large batches or at the end of a presidency, it forces the country to ask what kind of justice we want. The Constitution gives the president broad clemency power for a reason. Historically, presidents have used it to correct clear injustices, to offer mercy when the sentence no longer fits, or to heal a divided nation. Think Gerald Ford's pardon of Nixon or Jimmy Carter's clemency for Vietnam draft evaders. But clemency has also produced scandals when it looks arbitrary, politicized, or at odds with victims' rights. That dual nature, corrective tool versus political lever, is what makes debates like this so charged. Clemency is a legal power, but it isn't a moral blank check. The president's authority is constitutionally broad, yet legality and wisdom are not the same. A lawful pardon can still be a bad policy choice if it undercuts public safety or the perception of equal application of the law. The optics matter enormously. When communities see violent offenders or people who harmed law enforcement officers walk free, it feels like justice wasn't served. That feeling isn't only emotional, it has real effects on cooperation with police, victim healing, and the public's faith in institutions. Clemency also serves two very different roles that often collide. It can correct injustices, but it can also appear to reward allies or loyalists. Most people support the first and recoil at the second, but the lack of a transparent, routine process makes it hard to separate the two in practice. If the goal is to keep the corrective power of clemency while minimizing the political abuses that erode trust, reforms could bring balance. Clemency could be reviewed on a regular schedule rather than in last-minute waves at the end of a presidency. An independent advisory panel made up of judges, law enforcement, victims advocates, and defense counsel could add credibility to recommendations. Clear, public criteria for evaluating petitions would make the process less mysterious. Victims could be given a voice through notification and the chance to provide input. Evidence-based risk assessments would help ground decisions in public safety rather than gut feeling. Clemency decisions could also be tied to conditional requirements, like supervised release or participation in reentry programs. The Office of the Pardon Attorney could be strengthened with more independence, resources, and transparency, including public summaries of how cases are decided. Reentry programs, from halfway houses to mental health and drug treatment to help with jobs and driver's licenses, could be paired with clemency reforms to make release safer and more successful. None of this takes away the president's power. Instead, it strengthens the system to reduce the appearance and the reality of favoritism. That's the balance most citizens want: room for mercy, built on predictable, just processes that respect victims and protect public safety. Bondi and Coons touched on another unresolved question: the tension between punishment and rehabilitation. Prosecutors and victims often view clemency through the lens of accountability and pain. Reformers see it as a corrective to overly harsh sentences or systemic inequities. A better clemency framework acknowledges both truths, that people deserve fairness and that communities deserve safety, and designs processes that honor both. If you care about this issue, you can act. Ask your senators how they would reform the clemency process and whether they support transparency and advisory structures. Support reentry programs in your community, because whether or not reforms happen in Washington, the work of preventing repeat offenses often happens locally. And if this conversation mattered to you, let me know in the comments which reform you think should come first: transparency, independent review, or stronger reentry programs. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives that connect hearings and headlines to the real-world systems shaping justice and democracy.